We've told you the potentials the consciousness will bring in the Middle East.
Te dijimos sobre los potenciales que la conciencia traería al Medio Oriente.
We've told you to watch for startling things.
Te dijimos que miraras, observaras cosas
Startling
impresionantes.
things that no one has predicted.
Cosas impresionantes que nadie ha predicho.
Just like no one predicted the fall of the Soviet Union,
De la misma forma en que no hubo predicciones sobre la caída de la Unión Soviética.
no one has predicted the revolution in Iran,
Nadie ha predicho la revolución en Irán
and it will take place.
y ocurrirá.
This is the potential at hand.
Este es el potencial al frente.
The beginning of peace in the Middle East
El inicio de la paz en el Medio
in a way
Oriente
that no one has considered.
de una forma que nadie ha considerado,
And it won't be easy,
y no será fácil
and it won't be fast.
y no será rápido,
But within 18 years,
pero dentro de 18
you'll
años
see it happen.
verás qué sucede,
And it all has to do with something you have never seen before.
y todo tiene que ver con algo que tú nunca has visto antes.
Complete shift in the paradigm of how those work with others.
Un cambio completo en la manera en que unos trabajan con otros.
Compassionate action.
Acción compasiva.
You know what compassionate action is?
¿Sabes lo que es acción compasiva?
It's with one country looking at another
Es un país que mira a otro
and saying, I don't care what happened in the past.
y dice, no me importa lo que sucedió en el pasado.
Why don't we start over?
¿Por qué no comenzamos desde cero?
Why don't we sit down and start over
¿Por qué no nos sentamos y comenzamos desde cero?
so we don't worry about each other,
De manera de que no tengamos que preocuparnos uno del otro.
so we can share resources
De manera de que podamos compartir recursos
and relax,
y relajarnos.
so we can build schools and hospitals?
Para que podamos construir escuelas y hospitales.
Why don't we start over?
¿Por qué no comenzamos de cero?
And that is not what human nature used to be.
Y eso no es lo que solía ser la naturaleza humana.
And at the end of the 18 years, I'll give you a prophecy. The beginning of peace on earth in the Middle East. You're going to see ways out of things you never saw it before. In that amount of time, the youngsters, which are only teenagers now, will be leaders. They'll be on their way up. They will be thinking about concepts you did not think of. They will be solving puzzles that you said were unsolvable. There will be technology that is going to help the planet in ways you didn't even dream could be. That's the prophecy in 18 years. There's an invention coming, and we've told you about it before, and it will arrive. How quickly it arrives depending upon how quickly you can solve the Middle East. These 18 years are critical. And at the 18th year, if you haven't solved the Middle East and you don't see something there that you've always wanted to see, I'll be very surprised. For the potential ball is rolling. The young people, they'll be growing up in that period of time. They're the ones who will be the leaders, and they'll know better. They're the ones who did not assume hate as taught by their parents on both sides. They'll make a difference. You'll see it. This is the seed planting we're talking about. This is the great shift, and the potentials are that the seeds will be planted in the next 18 years that will shift this planet greatly in the next 70. And that if I could show you at all what might take place then, you would not understand it, for it features things that you know nothing about today. Like George Washington did not know about the internet, you don't know about what's coming. And it's not explainable. Because some of the discoveries will be quantum, and they'll have to do with communications. And when it is opened, and that particular knowledge is studied, and the invention is turned on, you will have communications with those you didn't even think existed. Can you imagine how that's going to change the earth? Unification. is going to create strength and peace on this planet. And in the process, that elephant under the table, which keeps it from happening, which you call terrorism, which you call that problem in the Middle East, that hatred, is going to take a twist that nobody can foretell. I've talked about it. Were you shocked when the Soviet Union fell over? What did your parents tell you about that? Wasn't that the talk of 50 years? Wasn't that the crux of why the laws were passed and the armaments were put together? Isn't that why the Pentagon was so big? And it all fell over overnight. Did anybody expect that? It'll be just as shocking. A problem that today is before you without solution will become history. And unity can begin. And I am telling you something right now that futurists will look back on and nod. There is a revolution coming of compassion. There is evolution coming of compassion. And the way it will be seen at first is different from what it will become. At first it will be seen as unusual, and later it will become human nature. This is what we teach and what we have seen happening on this planet. And again, we admonish you with this. 2 steps forward, 1 step back is the way of progress. If you're knocked backwards, get up and move forwards, knowing that you have the light. The one who knocked you back doesn't. This is critical for you to understand how progress and evolution of consciousness will look. I have seen it before, and I'm going to see it again, right here.
What do you think the reaction would be in the Middle East?
¿Cuáles creen que sería la reacción en el Medio Oriente?
If suddenly they were friends.
Si repentinamente se volviesen amigos.
Oh, there are those hearing this said that's impossible. It will never happen.
Sí, hay aquellos aquí que dicen eso es imposible, nunca sucederá.
Those people hate one another and have for thousands of years.
Esas personas se odian los unos a los otros y lo han hecho por miles de años.
Well, you just wait.
Bueno, espera.
And when it begins, you won't believe it.
Y cuando se inicie, cuando comience, no lo creerás.
What would happen if the countries which have been divided as long as you've been alive suddenly unite?
¿Qué pasaría si los países que han estado separados por tanto tiempo repentinamente se unificasen?
If leadership in high places started changing the way they do business as usual.
Si los líderes en distintos lugares comenzasen a cambiar la manera en que se solían hacer las cosas.
And compassionate action becomes something they can hardly wait to do.
Y que la acción compasiva se convierte en algo que apenas pueden esperar para realizar.
Is it possible, Kryon?
¿Es posible eso, Kryon?
Dear human being, we have seen this before.
Querido ser humano, hemos visto esto antes.
Putting together something that started in one fashion and ended up with pure, unlied consciousness.
Ser capaces de impulsar algo que comenzó de una manera y que termina en una conciencia alineada pura.
Pure, allied consciousness.
Una conciencia de alianza pura.
An Israeli and a Palestinian and
y los israelitas y los palestinos.
Pure, allied consciousness.
En una conciencia pura aliada.
Can you picture this?
¿Pueden imaginarse esto?
And you'll start with 3D issues and solve them all.
Y comenzarán con asuntos tridimensionales y los resolverán todos.
People will look at this and say, why didn't we think of this before?
Y la gente mirará esto y dirá, ¿por qué no se nos ocurrió antes?
How 3D of us, you'll say.
Qué tridimensional de nuestra parte.
Watch social media. the enemies that surround Israel are starting to change. And what is starting to change is not in their seniors, it's in their kids. The young people are going to create a brand new kind of association between countries. I used a different word because the paradigms of peace are going to start shifting with new ideas of what can happen. How can you put together so many things that are unequal in so many ways? In these next few years, you'll decide collectively on this planet a number of things. Through very slow attrition of the old energy dying out, you will gain the upper hand. There will be greater integrity. Old souls will create it. The very plan of what the earth is about will start to shape up. Eventually, someone will come up with the idea of an alliance of nations and promises of help for one another. This planet needs a coalition of human beings who help one another. There's too many of you to shut the door and say, I am going to be that which is, what you'd say, independent. You can't. Not anymore. You all need each other. And by putting things together and making common sense and working the hard puzzles of unequal economies, making it work so that a win-win situation will create peace on earth. And there are few holdouts who don't want it. And they're going to stick out like a sore thumb. You're going to see what I'm talking about as things go forward. You've seen the dark side, and they all have names and initials. And if you watch the news, you're appalled by what they're doing and how hateful they are and how the actions are so abominable. It hurts your heart to think that there could be such a thing. Where is the light? Humanity was going to have to put together their own coalitions and give it names and initials, representing those who would stand together as a civilization against what they do not want to happen again. There are old energies on the planet doing their best to pull you backwards. There's old leadership in some countries that will try to pull you backwards. There are inappropriate things that have happened in the past pulled to the future and also to now that you will look at. And the proof of what I'm going to say is that humanity will not tolerate it. In the past, it's been able to absolutely throw it out of kilter. And you get another war. This time, there'll be such an objection to a consciousness of humanity that now understands that putting things together and allying countries will bring peace. Not conquering. There's one way to get all of the resources. And it's not war. It's put together the countries and share them. And you're just discovering it. Inventions are coming your way, dear ones, for energy that will cost very little, not on a grid system, but individual neighborhoods, water for everyone through inventions, some of them without pipes. These are things to look forward to. But what if you could turn a page and start a new paradigm? A slow realization with a higher consciousness among Israelis, Palestinians, Iranians, and others that you just might have a chance to create something that no one ever prophesied. The New Jerusalem, the city on the hill, that historians will look back and say, isn't that something that they actually got together? I know the odds. I know it will not happen quickly. I know when it begins, there will be those who simply want to squash it and fight. I know there will be those who say we cannot be friends because history said we cannot be. I know that the synapse of the brain will often take over what the emotion of the heart knows better. And I also know that this is going to be a softer planet, and that the intuitive, the pineal, the emotions, and all of the things are starting to raise to the surface. And humanity is going to look at this situation and say, it's changing. Look. And in the Middle East, watch for the impossible. Watch also for those who would object to the impossible and want it to stay the same, and watch the dynamics develop. Is it possible, dear ones, that this could be the beginning of what historians will talk about for the rest of the history of the planet? The time when the planet took upon itself to get along.
Human being, do not fear what you're about to see. For the old energy will flail and die hard. And it's not going to go easily into the sunset with its head down. It's going to fight. I give you this as a metaphor. You'll see it, you'll know it, you'll understand it. Don't fear it. There'll be a period of recalibration and adjustment as this earth moves in slowly to an energy coming into the sun. The city on the hill slowly being revealed. The New Jerusalem.
The darkest of the dark will be revealed, and some will say, we're doomed. Because of this, they've never seen it before. They'll see it in the news and say, point to it and point to it and point to it, never understanding it's always been there. And now, because there's more light on this planet, the ratio of light and dark is going to be extremely meaningful in cleaning up things that are inappropriate. Things that are inappropriate. That's what's coming. Slowly. But you're seeing it all through the news. You're seeing abuses that are being shown, and light is being shown in these places. And then others are coming forward and saying, it's here too. And it's not just in this country, it's everywhere. And you know what that leads to? Eventually it will go to the countries that have been hiding it forever. We'd rather not have you see really what they're doing. And there will be a gasp from the planet when they see adults beheading and chopping off the limbs of children for political reasons. And your heart will hurt and you'll cry. And you'll say, woe is me, this place is awful called Earth. This is who we are, not knowing it's who you've always been. But the light is starting to shine in a way that's going to stop it. That's the news of Kryon. Darkness will never be able to exist in that purity. And the ugliest things on this earth will come crawling out of the dark. And you will look at them and you won't be able to see how ugly they are. And you will weep with what they do and what they've done. And they will die in the light. They'll die in the light. And then you'll realize there's a light that you've been showing all along. And they don't have a chance.
By choice, they chose the wrong avenue. By choice, they went into a dark consciousness, and by choice, they chose to do the unthinkable things that they've done for years, and their time is up. And you'll see it. You'll see it. And when you do, I want you to remember this channel and this time when this human in channel gave you this information. It's in the field. It's coming. The cleanup has begun. The cleanup has begun. Let these things not startle any of you. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The dark will resist. And it's not going to win. What's going to happen in the Middle East eventually, as we see it, and the potentials are already rolling for it, is that it will be done from an Islamic country, whose young people will rise up and decide that they wish to clean up the Middle East, and they're going to start by not believing what their parents have told them. And they're going to stop hating just because they're told to hate, or what happened 100 years ago, or 1,000, or even 2,000. And they're going to hold out their hand in a way that Israel cannot say no. Middle Easterners with Middle Easterners, former enemies looking at each other in the eye, all under 40. That's what we see. It's against all odds. It's against everything that's happening, against everything that your news will tell you, or anybody in your country, or your leadership. There is a potential of still another small battle.
Hay el potencial de incluso una pequeña batalla más
in the Middle East.
En el Medio Oriente.
And that particular battle will create something you have not seen.
Y esa pequeña batalla creará algo que no han visto.
It will create perhaps a unification of countries that never would have unified otherwise.
Creará el potencial de unificación de países que nunca se habrían unificado de otra forma.
It will have the opposite effect of one that was expected.
Tendrá un efecto opuesto a lo que se habría pensado.
Unification.
Unificación.
The big one is yet to follow, and it will. The potentials at the moment is that this is the beginning to you seeing it in Persia. And when it happens in Iran, it's going to be big news. They're going to be the first ones to throw out something that doesn't work, dear ones, because now they know how. And there's going to be young people all over the Middle East that look at that as the model. And then it's going to occur to Persia. How can we gain back the greatness of Persia? What did Persia have that was so amazing? The strength to create peace in the Middle East. From the resources, the wisdom, from the intelligence and the culture that is still inbred in those young people through their Akashic records. And they'll do it. And so we tell you yet again that the Israelis will sit and watch it happen. They'll not create it. The earth energy, Kryon, you say, is shifting. That means all humanity is going to feel it. Yes. All humanity will feel it. And you're going to see it in the way governments come down. Old energy regimes not renewing themselves, but deciding to change. There are those who said, impossible. Look what is here. Look at the alliances of the countries. Look what they represent. Look what's going on. Crying, this is never going to get better. Well, I want to revisit this. I want you to go back 50 years with me and talk then to some of those who said, it's impossible. With a Cold War raging, it's impossible. We are going to come to an end. You've got 50,000 nuclear weapons pointed at one another. It's impossible to get out of it no matter what you say, Kryon. Then you had the wild card, something that nobody predicted. No one on the planet, no prediction, said the Soviet Union would fall over. None. It's a wild card. Against every single odd, it happened. Dear ones, are you too set in your old ways to expect a wild card? All it takes is for one change of one consciousness of one leader to turn everything around. Consciousness is starting to shift. Peace is starting to be seen as power. Leaders want power. The wild card could be set up already. Someone you never thought. Someone being a political system, a leadership. You thought they were a certain way, and suddenly they see the propensity of the possibility of peace being their power seat forever. Can you imagine what would happen if they rearranged what would really give them visibility? And suddenly there was a flip. Against all odds, you would say. A wild card, you would say. You already had one, and you still don't believe in them. Perhaps instead of mass doom and gloom, confusion, you're going to have mass shock and surprise with another wild card. These things are all possible in your future.
And now we'll give you the wild card yet again. You need to hear it yet again, and there will be those who hear it and read it who know exactly where I'm going with this. The reestablishment of the glory that was Persia. The dynamics of respect that was Persia. Do your history. See the influence that they used to have. And today, they're the pariah of the world. Now that is ripe for a wild card. For everybody thinks one thing is going to happen over there. And there are bombs all ready for it too. They may even use a few, don't be shocked, for it might be the catalyst for the change. The country called Iran is overwhelmingly young. And the revolution that potentially will occur there will be more than just a revolution. There will be eventually a consensus. The best way to reestablish respect in the world, to open the borders for trade, to be seen as a benevolent Islamic nation, is for them to reestablish what the Prophet told them. Things are going to work in a way that will shock you. Shock you in their purity, in their goodness. And you will look back someday on these days and realize that this is the renaissance of humanity. I just gave you where it's going. I want you to hear this, because you're going to be part of it, now and later. I bring you these things because these are the highest potentials of the planet at the moment. Struggle, drama, old energy that doesn't want to die, leaders who will hold their ground even in death, coming soon. Shocks of where certain countries will go with their new leadership that no one thought they would go to. The wild cards are starting to occur. And it won't be anything that you ever saw in old prophecy. Congratulations, dear one. You stand on the precipice of something that you could only have dreamed about.
we talk about wild cards happening on the planet. A wild card is extreme synchronicity that changes places, people, the planet in ways that no one could conceive of. A real wild card will be outside of those who would tell the future. In other words, it would never be expected. You can tell wild cards because they are not created by that would be multiple consciousness. They usually stand alone. They're a group, they're one man, one woman, sometimes an extraordinary leader with wise ideas, sometimes an inventor, often an artist or poet, sometimes a master musician. And they make their mark so strongly and so completely that the world remembers them forever. That is a wild card. You have experienced wild cards in your society. What keeps you from thinking there could be more? There have been many. Let's go back to one that is profound. And I give it to you as an example. Every Israeli who is born here at some point is given the story of the Exodus. The beautiful story from slavery to the promised land. And the one responsible, the man, is Moses. What do you think about him? Let's examine this for a moment. Let's examine something that most Israelis are never told much about. What was it like in Egypt before Moses? Was he the only one to ever have a rebellion of the slaves? As an entire society was enslaved, did they just sit there and do nothing and endure it until Moses came? And the answer is no. There were many rebellions. It was tried repeatedly, and nothing worked. The Egyptians were strong. They would kill multiple people, multiple Jews, on a regular basis, and have everyone watch in order to suppress any kind of rebellion. There was a history before Moses. Who was Moses? What are the odds that the Jew who would take you into the promised land would be thought to be an Egyptian? This is synchronicity. Look at the story and look at how it worked. He had an Akash that was Moses, the one who was meant to do it, who made all the difference in history for the Jews. Why would you doubt that such a thing might happen again? That there would be leadership, not just here, but from other places in the world, that would come together in what we call a confluence of synchronicity that might change this planet forever. In the future days, weeks, and years,
los futuros días, semanas y años,
you're going to see some things
van a ver algunas cosas
that you didn't expect.
que no esperaban.
Because there will be those who also want to stop the cycle.
Porque también habrá aquellos que querrán detener el ciclo
And they're going to come from odd places.
y van a llegar de lugares extraños.
But for the first time, you may see that.
Y por primera vez podrán ver esto,
A different kind of leadership
un tipo diferente de liderazgo
coming from a different place.
que vendrá de un
Of
lugar
consciousness.
diferente, de un lugar de conciencia diferente.
And you will look at it and go, could this be real?
Y tú lo mirarás y dirás, ¿podría esto ser posible?
And it will be,
Y lo será,
because that's you stopping the cycle.
porque ese eres tú deteniendo el ciclo.
I hope this message is not too cryptic.
Espero que este mensaje no sea demasiado críptico.
But what if I suggested that graduates could now start coming in? And it wouldn't be their first time. Graduates may occur and start incarnating as what we'll call super souls. Ones who have been on planets who have been through this so many times that they land in this planet as soon as they can, and their consciousness is high and it's running. In other words, they are the helpers. They're the ones coming in, these super souls, incarnate, ready to go, almost like incarnated masters, to intermingle with all of you, and you'll know them and you'll see them, because they're going to be bright and they're going to be smart and they're going to have ideas that you wonder where they came from. Ways of government that you never thought of that make sense, ways of solutions that you didn't think were possible, and you'll say, how did this happen? Where did this come from? There are some here already. Do you like it? Here they come. Be ready for those, dear ones, who will know you when they see you, and you will know them when you see them. And you can just wink at them and say thank you for being here when we need you. I am Kryon, in love with humanity. And so it is.